There's a way to spend the night at the bottom of the Grand Canyon without hiking 10 miles. The catch? It might be one of the hardest reservations to get in the entire park. Today, we're talking about one of the most unique experiences in Grand Canyon National Park, riding a mule from the South Rim all the way down to Phantom Ranch at the bottom of the canyon. We'll cover how to book it, how much it costs, what it's really like, who should and shouldn't do it, and whether it's worth the effort. Now, before we get into the logistics, let's talk about the animals themselves. People often say they're going horseback riding into the Grand Canyon. They're not. They're riding mules. A mule is a cross between a horse and a donkey, and there's a reason the park uses them. Mules are incredibly sure-footed, intelligent, and cautious. In terrain where one wrong step could have serious consequences, those are all very good qualities. People often worry that mules are stubborn, and yet after riding one down the Grand Canyon myself, I realized that stubborn is exactly the personality trait I want in an animal that's standing between me and a 4,000-foot drop. Mules have been part of Grand Canyon history for more than a century. Before roads, helicopters, and modern infrastructure, mules carried supplies, mail, equipment, and people into the canyon. Even today, mules still transport supplies to Phantom Ranch. They aren't just part of the visitor experience, they're part of the canyon's history. And after riding one myself, I can tell you that there are moments when you become very grateful that someone chose a mule instead of a horse. I did this trip years ago with my family. My parents had been trying to get reservations for about a year before we finally got a spot. And at that time, I don't think I appreciated how difficult those reservations were to get. I was just excited to ride a mule into the Grand Canyon. What I definitely remember was the weather. We went in April and it was snowing at the South Rim. And as we started descending into the canyon, we rode through sleet and rain. By the time we reached Phantom Ranch at the bottom, we were peeling off layers in warm sunshine. It was like experiencing four seasons in a single workday. Now, the mule ride itself follows the Bright Angel Trail down into the canyon. The overnight trip covers about 10 miles on the way down, and it takes roughly 5 to 6 hours. Along the way, you'll stop for lunch, continue through layers of rock that tell nearly 2 billion years of Earth's history, and eventually make your way across the Colorado River towards Phantom Ranch. And yes, before you ask, it can be a little intimidating. One of my strongest memories is looking down at the endless switchbacks below us. And when you're hiking, you feel like you're the one in control. When you're riding a mule, you're basically handing over control to an animal named something like Daisy or Peanut or Rusty and decide to trust their judgment. Speaking of Peanut, that was actually the name of my little sister's mule. Peanut was the smallest mule in the group because my sister was the smallest rider in the group, which sounds adorable until you realize that her life is now in Peanut's tiny little hooves. If you're imagining your mule tiptoeing along a 6-inch wide ledge while dramatic movie music plays in the background, relax. The trails are wider than they appear in photos. And yet, on the other hand, there are definitely moments where you look over the edge and suddenly become very interested in your life insurance policy. The good news is that these mules know exactly what they're doing. The bad news is that your brain may need a few hours to accept that fact. Now, let's talk about the question most people have. How do you actually book this trip? Here's where things get complicated. This is not something you decide to do next month. The overnight mule ride is one of the most sought after reservations in the park. Demand far exceeds availability. And if you're hoping to ride through a specific season, you'll want to start planning well in advance. My parents waited about a year when we did it, and today many people start looking even earlier. If you're still in the planning phase of your Grand Canyon adventure, I put together a free national park starter guide that can help you plan trips all over the country. You can grab that at greatescapepodcast.com. Now, the next question people ask is, how much does this actually cost? Let's talk about the price tag because this is where a lot of people suddenly decide hiking sounds pretty good instead. Currently, the overnight mule ride typically costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,300 to $1,500 per person, depending on the specific trip and dates. If you're traveling as a couple, you're easily looking at more than $2,500 for the experience. This is not the budget way to see the Grand Canyon. It's a bucket list experience. So what exactly do you get for that money? Well, on day one, you'll ride roughly 5 to 6 hours from the South Rim to Phantom Ranch. The trip includes your mule, guides, lodging, meals, and transportation of your gear. Once you arrive at Phantom Ranch, you'll settle into your cabin and spend the evening at the bottom of one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. Dinner is one of the highlights. Traditionally, guests have enjoyed hearty meals like steak, chicken, or vegetarian options served family style in the canteen. And after spending all day getting into the canyon, very few people complain about the menu. The next morning, you'll have breakfast before climbing back aboard your mule for the journey back to the rim. Phantom Ranch itself has achieved almost legendary status among Grand Canyon enthusiasts. It's the only lodging below the rim and can only be reached by foot, mule, or rafting trip. There are historic cabins, dormitories, a canteen, and a surprisingly social atmosphere. As a kid, what struck me most was how hidden it felt. The Grand Canyon is enormous and somehow tucked away at the bottom of this little oasis where people from all over the world gather after spending hours hiking or riding into the canyon. It feels less like a hotel and more like a secret clubhouse hidden at the bottom of one of the world's most famous landscapes. Now, before we talk about whether riding a mule is easier than hiking, let's cover a few things nobody tells you about riding a mule into the Grand Canyon. First, the mules are almost always calmer than people riding them. The first timers are usually pretty easy to spot. They're the ones gripping the saddle like they're auditioning for a rodeo and quietly questioning every life decision that led them to this moment. Meanwhile, the mule is thinking, I've done this trail 100 times, please relax. Second, you stop worrying about the mule much sooner than you expect. The first few switchbacks can be nerve-wracking. Then you start realizing these animals know the trail better than you ever will. By the end of the trip, you're probably trusting them more than your GPS. Third, the scenery changes constantly. Most people imagine one giant canyon view that lasts all day. In reality, you're traveling through completely different worlds. You start among pine trees near the rim, descend through towering rock walls, past desert vegetation, and eventually find yourself near the Colorado River. It's like riding through several national parks stacked on top of each other. Fourth, Phantom Ranch feels way more remote than people expect. There's no road, there's no parking lot, no one accidentally stumbles across it. Everyone there made a deliberate effort to reach that spot. Whether they hiked, rode a mule, or floated down the Colorado River, everyone earned their dinner. And finally, you may be surprised by how tired you are afterwards. A lot of people assume riding a mule means sitting back and relaxing all day. 6 hours in a saddle has a way of introducing you to muscles you didn't know existed. The next morning, you'll probably walk around Phantom Ranch like someone who just completed a super tough leg day at the gym. Another common question is whether riding a mule is physically easier than hiking. The answer is yes and no. You're not the one climbing thousands of vertical feet under your own power. That part is definitely easier. On the other hand, spending 6 hours in a saddle is not exactly a spa treatment. Many riders are surprised by how sore they feel afterwards. Different muscles are working, different challenges appear. You earn the experience just a different way. There are age, weight, and physical requirements to ride the mules. Riders need to be able to mount and dismount the mule and remain comfortable in the saddle for long periods. You'll want to check out the latest requirements when booking because they can change over time. These trips operate during much of the year, which means conditions can vary dramatically. As I mentioned earlier, our April trip started with snow, moved through sleet and rain, and ended in sunshine. Summer can be brutally hot at the bottom of the canyon, while winter may bring snow and ice at the rim. If you want a deeper dive into the pros and cons of each season, I have an entire episode about the best times to visit the Grand Canyon that you can check out as well. Before we wrap up, let's answer an important question. Who is this trip actually for? If you're looking for the cheapest way to experience the Grand Canyon, this is not it. If you're terrified of heights, this may not be your favorite part. And if you're looking for a spontaneous weekend getaway, you're going to be disappointed by the reservation process. On the other hand, if you've always dreamed of seeing the bottom of the canyon, if hiking thousands of feet sounds intimidating, if you're traveling with multiple generations of family members, or if you're just simply looking for a once-in-a-lifetime adventure that very few Grand Canyon visitors will ever experience, this trip starts making a lot of sense. Most visitors stand on the rim and look down. Very few spend the night at the bottom. So, is it worth it? If you're looking for value, maybe not. If you're looking for convenience, definitely not. If you're looking for an unforgettable adventure that combines history, incredible scenery, unique lodging, and a story you'll still be telling years later, then yes, absolutely worth it. And if you're the kind of person who would rather earn every step of the journey, check out my episode on hiking into the canyon, where I break down everything you need to know before attempting the trip on foot. If you're enjoying this Grand Canyon series, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes. And until next time, keep planning your next great escape, and I'll see you in the next episode.